Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and this is the BisMerc, and you might be forgiven for thinking that there's not been much said about the BisMerc, that everything was done, the BisMerc was finished. Unfortunately not. So there was always that rust under the battery tray that I needed to sort out, and before I could do anything else really, so that was next on the list. Unfortunately, I have since found another issue. So this section of the sill is covered up by a plastic sort of sill cover. Well, the whole sill is really covered up with that. So this was never picked up in an MOT, and I hadn't noticed it when I looked under the car. The first time was when I had a quick look at these jacking points and realised that this one is gone. And essentially all around here there is corrosion on the back of that sill. So how bad that corrosion is at this stage, I don't know. We will find out, because I'm going to go to Anton's place. We're gonna do whatever welding is necessary there, but in my garage, that's taken up. The lift is taken up by the Lotus at the moment, and for this kind of job, it's just easier to do it on a proper lift. So I'm going to go and do it at Anton's place, and we'll take that off, and then we'll see just how bad that rust is. But it looks like it's not very good. Right, so I have uncovered the damage, and I think it's all right. It's pretty fixable. Anton, who was going to help me, actually, turns out he double booked himself with something, so I'm going to do it here. I think I can do it here, no problem. So just going to move the BisMerc around, get it a bit closer to the garage with the bit that needs welding, and then I'll start cutting it out, and then we'll get welding. And yeah, and I think maybe I'll do the washer bottle thing. Well, I don't know if I'll get time today, but I'll do it in this video as well, hopefully, and we can just get it out of the way. Alrighty, are you ready to see the damage? And there it is. So yeah, it's not great, but it's basically the whole jacking point has gone, but the structural bit pointing upwards, that it's sort of strengthened by a rib going up into the upper chassis, that's all okay. So really I just have to replace and re-weld this out a bit. I'm going to cut it out probably from there on, and we'll see what it's like and then get welding. Well, it was at this point that my GoPro, really handy, decided for no reason to just stop recording sound. So I'm just going to have to explain to you what happened since then. Firstly, one of the really good things is that the other jacking points are actually completely fine. There was a bit of surface rust on one, which I treated, but apart from that, they were all good. So the next stage was, well, the first thing is I tried to cut out the rust of that sill as much as possible with tin snips, because I was doing this job on Good Friday, and as amazingly nice as my neighbours are, I didn't really want to annoy them too much. So I started with the tin snips, got as much off as I could, but eventually I had to revert to the angle grinder because there was only so much I could do. Also cleaned it off as much as possible with the wire brush, but again, because I didn't want to annoy my neighbours too much, I don't think I did it quite enough, and that had some issues later on. But anyhow, the next phase was, well, one of the main issues with doing this, the most difficult thing is, first of all, the actual sill is ridged for strength. So it's not just a sort of, it's curved, but there's also some ribs in between. So it's not just a straightforward flat panel. So the way to deal with that is to just start tack welding at the bottom and then just fold it and beat it into place. Now, luckily with this sill, it's not really the outer sill that provides that much of the strength. There's an inner section which goes all the way up, which strengthens that jacking point. So the jacking point itself was always going to be all right anyhow. But I sort of tack welded the whole bottom in, and then started sort of delicately using a mallet like the craftsman that I am to try and sort of bend it into shape. Now, as I mentioned, I didn't really clean the metal well enough because I didn't want to use the angle grinder for that long. So some of the welds were a bit tricky and my welding isn't the best. But eventually, with a bit of gentle persuasion and a bit of patience, I was able to get a sort of a pretty good shape, and I was able to weld that panel into place. But then came another issue. And that is that obviously the center section is welded onto that supporting tube normally. I didn't have a drill bit long enough, or a conical drill bit, which is what I would have needed, in order to be able to enlarge it, in order to then sort of weld it round on that section. So I was going to have to bring the car to Anton's. Just before then, I decided to have a look at that washer bottle as well, because there's a section there, there's a hole under the washer bottle, and it would have been quite good to weld that. Having looked at it though, and the access and the shape, it was going to be quite difficult to do that. Plus, it's not a structural section, it's basically a bit of bodywork. It's only ever rusted because of water coming down from the washer bottle, and I decided that actually the best thing to do for that would be to just clean it up as much as possible, treat it, and then use some fiberglass. So as you can see, I cleaned up the bottom, then I put a layer of fiberglass on the bottom, and then at the top I went way over the top just to make sure it's strong, although it doesn't particularly need to be, and I fiberglassed that whole top bit as well. And I think and then I just sort of covered that up with some black underseal just to make it look a bit tidier. But I think that will be good, and I'm quite happy with that, and obviously much less time consuming than doing a full-on welding job and so on. Next, I went to Anton's yard, and while I was there and waiting for him, I saw the A4, the Ukraine A4. That Audi still needs a bit of work. I think it's going to happen next week, or the 25th is the earliest I can get it MOT'd. So, but anyway, I wanted to try and just check the battery while I was there, because it's had a bit of a history of not starting, and I thought maybe it was on the way out. I tried charging it fully to see if it would work. But no, that's not starting, so I need to source a new battery for the A4. If any of you know where the cheapest place is to get something that will work like that, let me know. And by the way, thank you all for your donations on that. That was just amazing. And again, I will update you separately on an Audi video. Now back to the BisMerc, and that's the conical drill piece that I needed in order to sort of remount that hole and make it to the right size. After that, it needed to be sort of beaten in a little bit so that it would touch the supporting tube. Clean it all up so it could be welded to. Then a little bit of welding, and then that was pretty much done. And although obviously it doesn't look quite OEM, it's strong. I've sort of seam sealed the sides as well of the panel, and zinc primed it, ready for a last sort of covering. And that's pretty much done, and I'm quite happy with that. I think that will do on the BisMerc. So an unexpected job that needed doing, but it's done now, so that's great. And the rest of the sills are all really good, so that's awesome. So there is the question of what I'm going to do with the BisMerc, which is just ongoing because I keep changing my mind. First of all, I sold that cream interior at a loss because it was just going to be too much hassle. You have to change all the stuff in here, otherwise it would look ridiculous to just change the seats and door cards. But I have found possibly a grey one where it's just seats and door cards that need doing, which would work absolutely fine with the car as it is. So I'm kind of umming and ahhing about that. The other thing is, again, if I keep it, I'd quite like to do a full suspension refresh. It's driving so much better than ever before, but it needs eventually, I think it needs a ball joint doing at the front. And whilst there, I'm thinking of changing the suspension. So if you have any hints or tips, best suspension setup to go for. I want really good ride. I wouldn't mind the Sportline ride height, so a tiny bit lower, but I don't want it to be stiff at all. This is no sports car, and it's pointless pretending it is. At the front, it's already lower, but I thought it was spring sag, but someone said it's not likely to be that. It's much more likely to be that it's already got some different springs. So maybe it's just changing the dampers at the front would improve the ride. At the back, they're new, but I'm not sure what they've gone for. So I don't know. Let me know what the best sort of most economical suspension options are, and then I'll decide whether I want to go down that route or not. Thank you very much. Happy Easter. Thank you so much for following and for watching the videos, and see you for the next one.